The California sun was shining brightly over Venice Beach on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. The famous beach was full of life, with tourists taking pictures, street performers showing their talents, and locals enjoying their weekend routines. The salty ocean breeze carried the mixed smells of sunscreen, hot dogs, and fresh popcorn through the air. Near the famous Muscle Beach area, where many bodybuilders and fitness enthusiasts worked out in the open air, 12-year-old Maya Thompson was practicing her skateboarding skills. She stood out from the usual crowd, not just because of her young age, but because of her remarkable focus and determination. Maya wore her favorite purple helmet, decorated with stickers of her skateboarding heroes, and comfortable clothes that helped her move freely on her board. Maya had saved money for 6 months to buy her skateboard, doing small jobs like helping neighbors with their gardens and walking dogs after school. The board wasn't the most expensive one in the shop, but to Maya, it was worth more than gold. She had painted it herself with beautiful patterns of stars and waves, making it uniquely hers. Every weekend, Maya's mother would drive her to Venice Beach from their small apartment in downtown Los Angeles. Her mom always said that dreams don't work unless you do, and Maya took these words seriously. While other kids her age spent their weekends playing video games or hanging out at the mall, Maya dedicated her time to improving her skateboarding skills. On this particular day, Maya was trying to perfect a new trick she had been practicing for weeks, the kickflip. She had watched countless YouTube tutorials and spent hours studying how professional skaters did it. The trick wasn't easy, and Maya had the bruises on her knees and elbows to prove it. But she didn't mind the falls. Each one taught her something new about balance and timing. The area where Maya practiced was perfect for beginners. It was a smooth stretch of concrete near Muscle Beach, where she could see the ocean on one side and the famous outdoor gym on the other. Usually, the spot was quiet enough for her to concentrate, with just a few tourists passing by to watch the bodybuilders or take pictures of the beach. Today seemed different, though. There were more people than usual, and Maya noticed a group of bikers who had parked their motorcycles nearby. They were loud and rough-looking, wearing leather jackets covered in patches despite the warm weather. Maya tried not to pay attention to them and focused on her practice instead. As the afternoon went on, more people gathered around Muscle Beach. There were whispers among the crowd about a special visitor expected that day. Some said they had seen camera crews setting up equipment earlier, but Maya was too focused on her skateboarding to care about the excitement building around her. The young girl's determination showed in every movement. Her dark curly hair was tied back neatly, and her face showed complete concentration as she positioned her feet on the board. She had been getting closer to landing the kickflip properly, and she could feel that today might be the day she finally got it right. Maya's mom watched proudly from a nearby bench, taking small breaks from reading her book to film her daughter's progress on her phone. She wanted to document every milestone in Maya's journey, believing that her daughter's passion for skateboarding could lead to something special in the future. The scene was peaceful and inspiring, a young girl chasing her dreams under the California sun, surrounded by the diverse crowd that made Venice Beach famous. Nobody could have guessed that this ordinary afternoon would soon turn into something completely unexpected, or that a simple practice session would become a moment that would change many lives. As Maya continued to practice, adjusting her stance and speed with each attempt, she remained unaware of the events about to unfold. The gentle waves crashed against the shore, the seagulls circled overhead, and the famous Venice Beach boardwalk buzzed with its usual energy. It was just another beautiful day in Los Angeles, but sometimes the most important moments happen on the most ordinary days. The peaceful afternoon at Venice Beach took a dark turn when Frank Miller, a heavily tattooed biker in his 40s, noticed Maya practicing her skateboarding. He stood out even among his fellow bikers, wearing a worn leather vest covered in patches and chains that jingled when he walked. His face showed years of hard living, with a thick beard hiding most of his expression, but his eyes carried a mean look that made people nervous. Frank had been drinking beer with his biker friends for the past hour, getting louder and more aggressive with each can they emptied. When he spotted Maya, he nudged his friends and started making loud comments about her. At first, they were just whispers among his group, but as his confidence grew, so did the volume of his voice. "Look at that. Guess anybody thinks they can skateboard these days," Frank called out, his voice carrying across the area. Maya tried to ignore him, focusing harder on her practice, but his words were getting harder to block out. A few people nearby looked uncomfortable, shifting their feet and pretending not to hear. Maya's mother, sensing trouble, closed her book and stood up from her bench. She started walking towards her daughter, but she was too far away when Frank decided to move closer to where Maya was practicing. His heavy boots made loud thuds against the concrete as he approached, and the smell of beer followed him. "Hey girl, this ain't the place for you," Frank shouted, his words slightly slurred. "Why don't you go back to your own neighborhood?" His friends laughed at his comments, encouraging him to continue. Some tourists quickly walked away from the scene, while others pulled out their phones, ready to record any trouble that might happen. Maya's hands started shaking slightly, but she remembered what her father had always told her before he passed away. "Stand tall, baby girl. Your worth isn't determined by other people's ignorance." She tried to continue practicing, moving her skateboard in small circles to stay active while avoiding Frank's direction. The tension in the air grew thicker as more people gathered around, creating an uncomfortable circle around Maya and the approaching biker. Some mothers pulled their children away, while a few young men looked like they wanted to step in but weren't sure if they should. The beautiful beach day had suddenly turned cold despite the warm sun overhead. Frank, encouraged by the attention and his friends' laughter, started making monkey sounds and racist jokes. Each word was like a punch to Maya's stomach, but she held her head high, though tears were beginning to form in her eyes. Her mother was now pushing through the crowd, trying desperately to reach her daughter. "What's wrong? Can't you speak?" Frank taunted, now standing just a few feet from Maya. "Or maybe you don't understand English?" His friends continued laughing, but some of them were starting to look uncomfortable with how far things were going. The crowd had grown larger, with some people recording the scene on their phones while others looked away in shame. Maya tried to move away, but Frank stepped in front of her skateboard. His large frame cast a shadow over her small figure, making her feel trapped. The smell of beer on his breath made her stomach turn as he leaned closer. "This is Venice Beach, girl. We don't need your kind here showing off." Just then, Maya attempted one more time to move past him, pushing off on her skateboard. Frank's face turned red with anger at what he saw as disrespect. Without warning, he stuck his boot out, catching the edge of Maya's skateboard as she moved. The board stopped suddenly, but Maya didn't. She flew forward, hitting the concrete hard. Her helmet protected her head, but her hands and knees scraped against the rough surface. Her carefully painted skateboard rolled away, now scratched and damaged from Frank's heavy boot. The crowd gasped, but still, nobody moved to help. Maya's mother finally broke through the crowd, running toward her daughter. But before she could reach Maya, Frank kicked the skateboard again, sending it spinning across the concrete. "Oops," he said with a cruel laugh. "Guess you should have stayed in your own neighborhood." The crowd's silence was deafening. Some people looked down at their feet, others whispered among themselves, but nobody challenged the large, intimidating biker. What nobody noticed, however, was that the camera crew that had been setting up equipment earlier was now focused on the scene, and a very familiar figure had stopped his workout at Muscle Beach to watch what was happening. Maya's hands stung from the fall, tiny bits of concrete embedded in her palms as she pushed herself up from the ground. Her mother had reached her now, kneeling beside her with worry written across her face. But Maya wasn't looking at her mom. Her eyes were fixed on her damaged skateboard, which lay several feet away with fresh scratches across its carefully painted surface. "Baby, are you okay?" her mother asked, trying to help Maya stand. But before Maya could answer, Frank's loud voice boomed over them again. "Ah, does the little girl need her mommy?" he mocked, taking another swig from his beer can. His friends had spread out in a loose circle around them, creating a wall that made escape difficult. Some of them looked uncomfortable now, especially as they watched Maya's mother try to protect her daughter. Maya's mother stood up straight, placing herself between her daughter and Frank. Though she was much smaller than the biker, her voice was steady and strong. "Leave my daughter alone. We don't want any trouble." Frank's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "Well, maybe you should have thought about that before coming to our beach." He crushed his empty beer can and threw it on the ground near Maya's feet. The aluminum made a hollow sound as it bounced on the concrete. The crowd had grown even larger now. Some people had their phones out, recording everything, while others whispered among themselves. A few young men shifted nervously, wanting to help but intimidated by Frank's size and his group of bikers. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Maya, despite her scraped hands and knees, managed to stand up. Her purple helmet was scratched but had protected her head from the fall. Tears streamed down her face, but there was something else in her expression now. Anger was replacing fear. "I have every right to be here," Maya said, her voice shaking but clear. Her words seemed to echo across the suddenly quiet beach. Even the waves seemed to pause their eternal dance with the shore. Frank's face turned red with rage. How dare this young girl challenge him? He took 2 heavy steps forward, causing Maya's mother to tighten her grip on her daughter's shoulders. The other bikers moved in closer too, their boots scraping against the concrete. "You got a big mouth for such a little girl," Frank growled, now towering over both Maya and her mother. "Maybe someone needs to teach you some respect." He reached down and picked up Maya's skateboard, holding it up like a trophy. Maya's heart jumped into her throat. That skateboard represented 6 months of saving money, countless hours of practice, and her dreams of becoming a professional skater one day. "Please," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "That's mine." Frank examined the skateboard with exaggerated interest. "Nice paint job," he said sarcastically, "but I think it needs some improvements." He pulled out a pocket knife, the blade catching the sunlight as he flicked it open. Several people in the crowd gasped. Maya's mother pulled out her phone, desperately dialing 911, but her hands were shaking so badly she could hardly press the numbers. The other bikers started to back away, realizing things had gone too far. "Frank, man, that's enough," one of his friends called out. "She's just a kid." But Frank wasn't listening. He pressed the knife against the skateboard's surface, ready to scratch away Maya's careful artwork. His face showed cruel pleasure as he watched tears roll down Maya's cheeks. Just then, a shadow fell across the scene. Someone was moving through the crowd, someone big. The gathered people parted like the Red Sea, whispers suddenly spreading like wildfire. Frank was too focused on his cruel game to notice, but his friends saw it. Their faces changed from amusement to shock, then to something close to fear. The camera crew that had been filming nearby had stopped their work entirely. Their cameras were now pointed at the unfolding scene, capturing every moment. The person approaching had been their original subject for the day, but now they were about to film something very different from what they had planned. Maya, still crying but standing brave, didn't see the approaching figure either, but she did notice how the crowd had gone completely silent, how even the other bikers had taken several steps back. Something was about to happen, something big. The tension in the air had changed from fear to anticipation. Just 15 minutes earlier, Dwayne, "The Rock" Johnson had been doing his regular workout at Muscle Beach. The camera crew was filming him for a documentary about his early days, back when he was a young man with big dreams working out in this very spot. He wore simple black workout clothes, his massive arms gleaming with sweat under the California sun. Between sets of exercises, Dwayne had been telling stories about his struggles as a young man with only $7 in his pocket. The documentary crew hung on every word, capturing his genuine smile and the warmth in his eyes as he remembered those challenging times. This was supposed to be a day of positive memories and inspiration. But then he heard it, the sound of cruel laughter and racist comments cutting through the usual beach noise. At first, he tried to continue with the interview, but his attention kept drifting to the growing commotion nearby. The crew noticed his distraction, following his gaze to where a crowd was gathering. "Let's take 5, Dwayne said to the crew, his expression changing from friendly to concerned. He grabbed his towel and water bottle, then moved closer to observe what was happening. His height gave him a clear view over the heads of the gathered crowd. What he saw made his blood boil. A large biker was terrorizing a young black girl and her mother. Dwayne had faced racism himself many times in his life, and seeing it directed at a child brought back painful memories. He watched as the girl fell from her skateboard, saw her brave attempt to stand up to her bully. The documentary crew, sensing a powerful moment, quietly followed him with their cameras. They knew Dwayne well enough to recognize the look in his eyes, the same determination he had when preparing for a difficult scene or an important match in his wrestling days. "Should we call security?" one of the crew members whispered to Dwayne, but he held up his hand, telling them to wait. He wanted to understand the full situation before stepping in. His years in entertainment had taught him that timing was everything, even in real-life situations like this. From his position, Dwayne could see everything clearly. He noticed how some of the other bikers were becoming uncomfortable with their friend's behavior. He saw the phones recording the incident, the worried faces in the crowd, the fear in the young girl's eyes, and the protective stance of her mother. When the biker pulled out his knife, Dwayne's jaw tightened. He had seen enough. He turned to the documentary crew and spoke in a low, serious voice. "Keep filming. People need to see this. Not just what's wrong with the world, but what we can do to make it right." The crew nodded, quickly adjusting their equipment. They had planned to film a documentary about Dwayne's past, but now they were about to capture something much more powerful, a real-life moment of standing up against hate. Dwayne took a deep breath, remembering his own father's words about handling difficult situations. Rocky Johnson had taught him that true strength wasn't about muscles or intimidation, but about using your power to protect others and do what's right. As he began moving through the crowd, people recognized him immediately. Whispers spread like wildfire. "It's The Rock. Dwayne Johnson. Oh my God!" But he didn't acknowledge the excitement. His focus was entirely on the scene in front of him. The crying girl, her frightened mother, and the biker who thought he could bully them without consequences. The crowd parted naturally as he approached, creating a clear path. The documentary crew followed silently, their cameras capturing every step. Dwayne could see the biker's friends starting to notice him, their faces changing from amusement to shock as they recognized who was approaching. But the biker himself, still focused on tormenting the young girl, remained unaware of what was coming. He held the skateboard in one hand and the knife in the other, too caught up in his cruel game to notice that the atmosphere around him had completely changed. Dwayne took one final breath, squaring his massive shoulders. In his career, he had played many heroes on the big screen, but this was real life. This was a chance to show that standing up against racism and bullying wasn't just something that happened in movies. It was something everyone should do, every single day. The first thing Frank noticed wasn't Dwayne Johnson's presence. It was the sudden silence. The cruel laughter of his friends had stopped. The whispers in the crowd had changed to excited murmurs. Even the seagulls seemed to quiet down, as if they knew something big was about to happen. What's everyone looking at? Frank started to turn around, the knife still pressed against Maya's skateboard. His annoyed expression froze when he found himself staring at a massive chest covered in a black workout shirt. His eyes slowly traveled upward, taking in the impressive shoulders, the famous tribal tattoo visible on one arm, and finally, the stern face of Dwayne, "The Rock" Johnson. Frank's mouth opened, but no words came out. The knife in his hand suddenly felt very heavy and very wrong. The bare courage that had made him so bold just moments ago evaporated like morning dew under the hot sun. He was no longer the intimidating one. He was the one being intimidated. "I believe," Dwayne said in a calm but powerful voice that carried across the beach, "that skateboard belongs to the young lady." His eyes flickered to the knife in Frank's hand, then back to Frank's face. The message was clear without words. "Put it away. Now." Frank's hands started trembling. He quickly folded the knife and shoved it into his pocket, almost dropping Maya's skateboard in the process. Behind him, Maya and her mother watched in amazement as their tormentor transformed from a fierce bully into a nervous man who couldn't even make eye contact. We were just," Frank stammered, taking a step backward. His leather vest didn't seem so tough anymore, and his patches and chains looked more like costume jewelry under Dwayne's steady gaze. "Just what?" Dwayne asked, taking a step forward. His voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the softness. "Just harassing a child? Just making racist comments? Just pulling a knife on a little girl's skateboard?" With each question, he took another step forward, while Frank took another step back. The documentary crew captured everything, their cameras moving silently to get the best angles. The crowd had grown even larger, with people holding up their phones to record this unexpected moment. Some were already live streaming the scene to social media. Dwayne turned slightly to look at Maya, his expression softening. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Maya nodded, wiping tears from her face with the back of her hand. Her mother stood close, one arm protectively around her daughter's shoulders. Turning back to Frank, Dwayne's expression hardened again. "Hand me the skateboard," he said. It wasn't a request, it was a command. Frank practically thrust the board into Dwayne's massive hands, eager to get rid of it. Dwayne examined the skateboard carefully, noting the beautiful artwork Maya had done and the fresh scratches from Frank's boot. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled, not at Frank, but at the crowd around them. "You know what I see here?" he asked, his voice projecting so everyone could hear. I see a lot of people who watched this happen, who saw a grown man bullying a child and did nothing. His words made many in the crowd look down in shame, but I also see a brave young girl who stood up for herself, who didn't let fear stop her from doing what she loves. Maya felt a surge of pride through her tears. The most famous wrestler and actor in the world was standing up for her, praising her courage. Her mother squeezed her shoulders gently. So here's what's going to happen, Dwayne continued, looking directly at Frank again. You're going to apologize to this young lady and her mother. Then you're going to leave this beach, and you're going to think long and hard about the kind of person you want to be, because right now, you're not being the kind of person anyone should respect. The camera crew moved closer, capturing Frank's face as it turned red with embarrassment. His friends had backed away completely, leaving him alone to face the consequences of his actions. The mighty bully had been reduced to what he truly was, a coward who picked on those he thought couldn't fight back. Frank stood there, sweat running down his face despite the cool ocean breeze. The crowd waited in silence for his response. This was his moment of truth, a chance to show what kind of man he really was beneath all the tough guy attitude and leather. Dwayne Johnson hadn't moved, his massive frame still between Frank and Maya's family. But instead of using his size to intimidate, he was doing something more powerful. He was giving Frank a chance to make things right. Frank started, his voice cracking. He cleared his throat and tried again. I'm sorry. The words came out weak and unconvincing. Dwayne crossed his arms, making his biceps look even bigger, and raised an eyebrow. Try again, Dwayne said quietly. And this time, remember you're apologizing to a brave young girl who did nothing wrong except try to enjoy her day at the beach. Think about how you'd feel if someone treated your daughter this way. Frank's face changed at those words. Something in his eyes shifted, as if a wall had suddenly crumbled. He looked at Maya, really looked at her for the first time, and saw not just a black girl on a skateboard, but a child. A child he had terrorized for no reason except his own prejudice. I'm sorry, he said again, but this time his voice was different. It was heavy with shame and understanding. I'm truly sorry for what I did and said. It was wrong. All of it was wrong. He looked at Maya's mother too. I'm sorry for scaring you and your daughter. No parent should have to protect their child from someone like I was today. The crowd murmured in surprise at the sincerity in his voice. Even his fellow bikers who had backed away earlier were watching with newfound respect. This wasn't just an apology forced by fear of the Rock. This was a man facing his own demons. Dwayne noticed the change too. His stance relaxed slightly, though he remained alert. Why don't you tell Maya and everyone here what you learned today? He suggested, his tone encouraging rather than demanding. Frank nodded slowly. I learned that I've been carrying around hate that isn't doing anyone any good, especially not me. I learned that being tough doesn't mean being cruel. He paused, struggling with his words. And I learned that real strength isn't about making others feel small, it's about lifting them up. Maya, still holding her mother's hand, stepped forward slightly. Thank you for saying sorry, she said softly. Her simple words of acceptance seemed to hit Frank harder than any physical blow could have. Dwayne smiled, a genuine warm smile that lit up his whole face. That's what courage looks like, he said, looking from Maya to Frank. Both saying you're sorry and accepting an apology, those take real strength. He turned to the crowd, his voice carrying across the beach. We've all got prejudices we need to face. We've all got moments where we can choose to be better. It's not about being perfect. It's about being willing to learn and change. The documentary crew captured everything, the cameras moving between Frank's transformed face, Maya's brave smile, and Dwayne's powerful presence. This wasn't just about a bully being put in his place anymore. It was about human connection and the possibility of change. Frank looked down at his leather vest, covered in tough guy patches and symbols. With shaking hands, he started to unzip it. I don't deserve to wear this right now, he said quietly. Not until I've made some real changes. Dwayne put a hand on Frank's shoulder. Keep it on, he said. Let it remind you of this moment. Let it remind you of who you want to become, not who you were 10 minutes ago. The sun was starting to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across Venice Beach. The light caught the tears in Frank's eyes as he nodded, understanding the chance he was being given. The crowd around them had grown even larger, but now the atmosphere was different. There was no tension, no fear, only the quiet appreciation of witnessing a moment of real human transformation. Maya's skateboard still lay on the ground where Frank had dropped it. The scratches on its surface told the story of hatred. But what would happen next would tell a different story, one of redemption, hope, and the power of standing up for what's right. The crowd at Venice Beach watched in amazement as Dwayne Johnson picked up Maya's scratched skateboard and examined it carefully. His large hands held the board gently, almost like he was holding something precious. He turned to one of his crew members and whispered something. The crew member nodded quickly and ran off towards their production van. "Maya," Dwayne said, kneeling down to be at eye level with the young girl, "how long have you been skating?" His kind smile and gentle tone helped wash away the last traces of fear from the earlier confrontation. 6 months, Maya answered, her voice growing stronger. "I saved up for that board by doing chores and walking dogs." She looked at the scratches on her beloved skateboard with sadness. Dwayne nodded thoughtfully. "You know, when I was younger and had only $7 in my pocket, I learned something important." He paused, making sure Maya was listening. "I learned that sometimes the hardest moments in life lead us to our greatest victories." The crew member returned, carrying a brand new skateboard. It wasn't just any skateboard, it was a professional grade board, the kind Maya had only dreamed about while window shopping at the skate store. Dwayne took it and held both boards side by side. "This old board," he said, holding up Maya's scratched one, "tells the story of your determination. These scratches, they're not just damage, they're proof that you stood up for yourself today. That makes this board special." He handed it back to Maya, who held it close. Then he held up the new board. "And this one? This is for your future. Because people who show the kind of courage you showed today deserve to have their dreams supported." Maya's eyes widened as Dwayne handed her the new skateboard. It was beautiful, sleek, and professional, with wheels that gleamed in the sunlight. Her mother gasped, tears forming in her eyes at this unexpected kindness. "But wait," Dwayne said with a grin, "we're not done yet." He turned to his crew. "Hey, bring over those markers." The crew quickly brought over a set of permanent markers in different colors. "First," he said, uncapping a marker, "I'm going to sign this board. But more importantly," he handed Maya several markers, "I want you to decorate it just like you did with your first board, because your art is part of who you are, and that should never be erased." Frank, who had been watching quietly, stepped forward hesitantly. I'd like to help replace the art on our old board too," he offered. "I know someone who does professional airbrush work. If it's okay with Maya and her mom, I'd like to have him restore it, make it even better than before." Dwayne looked at Maya and her mother, letting them make the decision. After a moment, Maya's mother nodded. "That would be very kind," she said, her voice firm but forgiving. The atmosphere at Venice Beach had completely transformed. Where there had been tension and fear, now there was joy and community. Some of the other skaters who regularly practiced at the beach came forward, offering to teach Maya new tricks. Even some of Frank's biker friends approached, asking if they could help set up a small skateboarding event to support young skaters in the community. As Maya began to decorate her new board, with Dwayne offering encouraging comments about her artistic choices, the documentary crew captured it all. This wasn't the story they had planned to tell today, but it was perhaps even more important. A story about confronting hatred with compassion, about the power of standing up for what's right, and about how one moment of courage could transform not just one person, but an entire community. "You know what the best part of this is?" Dwayne asked, watching Maya work on her board. The crowd leaned in to hear his words. "It's not about me being here. It's about all of us learning that we have the power to stand up against hate. Every single one of us can be a hero in our own way." The sun was getting lower on the horizon, painting the sky in beautiful shades of orange and pink. But the day wasn't over yet. Maya still had one more surprise coming, something that would turn this challenging day into one of the most amazing experiences of her young life. 1 week after the incident at Venice Beach, Maya returned to her favorite skating spot, but this time she wasn't alone. The beach was packed with people, all gathered for the first Skate Against Hate community event. Colorful banners hung between the palm trees, and a professional skating ramp had been set up near Muscle Beach. The event had started as a small idea, but after videos of the confrontation went viral on social media, it had grown into something much bigger. Dwayne Johnson's Instagram post about the incident had reached millions of people, inspiring skaters and community members from all over Los Angeles to get involved. Frank, the former bully, had surprised everyone by becoming one of the event's main organizers. He had traded his intimidating leather vest for a bright event t-shirt that read "Unity in the Community." His motorcycle club had also undergone a transformation, with many members now volunteering to help teach kids basic skateboarding safety. Maya's old skateboard, now beautifully restored and airbrushed by Frank's artist friend, hung in a special display area. Next to it was a large photo of the moment Dwayne Johnson had knelt down to give her the new board. The image had become a symbol of standing up against racism and bullying. "Ready for your big moment?" Maya's mother asked, adjusting her daughter's helmet. Maya nodded, clutching her new skateboard, now covered in beautiful artwork she had created, along with the rock's signature and encouraging messages from other professional skaters who had heard her story. The crowd cheered as Maya approached the ramp. Among them were many young girls, especially girls of color, who had been inspired by her story. Some held signs with messages like "Skating has no color" and "Be brave like Maya." Before she started her demonstration, Maya looked around at the familiar faces. There was Frank, standing with his fellow bikers, all of them smiling and giving her thumbs up. The documentary crew was back too, filming this follow-up to the viral confrontation. But most surprisingly, on a large screen set up nearby, Dwayne Johnson's face appeared via video call. "Hey Maya," his voice boomed through the speakers. "I wish I could be there in person, but I'm sending you this message from my movie set. Remember what I told you, sometimes life's hardest moments lead to our greatest victories. Show them what you got, champ." Maya took a deep breath and dropped into the ramp. The skills she'd been practicing for 6 months came together beautifully. She landed trick after trick, including the kickflip that she had been struggling with on that fateful day. The crowd erupted in cheers with each successful move. After her performance, Frank stepped forward to make an announcement. His voice, once used to intimidate, now carried a message of hope. "Today, we're launching a scholarship program for young skaters who need help buying equipment. We're calling it the Maya's Courage Fund." He paused, looking at Maya with genuine respect. Sometimes it takes a child to teach us adults what real strength looks like. The local news cameras captured it all: the skating, the smiles, the transformed community. But they also captured something more important: people from different backgrounds coming together, learning from each other, and creating positive change. As the sun set on Venice Beach once again, Maya sat with her mother, watching kids of all ages try out skateboarding, many for the first time. Some fell, but there was always someone there to help them up. The spirit of that dramatic day had created ripples that continued to spread. On social media, #SkateAgainState had become a movement, with similar events being planned in cities across the country. Maya's story had touched something in people's hearts: the universal desire to stand up against injustice and the power of responding to hate with love and understanding. "Mom," Maya said, watching a young girl tentatively step onto a skateboard while Frank carefully helped her find her balance, "I think this is even better than becoming a professional skater." Her mother smiled, pulling her daughter close. "Why's that, baby?" Maya grinned, her eyes shining with wisdom beyond her years. "Because now everybody can see that it's not about what you look like or where you come from. It's about who you choose to be and how you treat others." As if to emphasize her words, the sunset painted the sky in beautiful colors, reminding everyone that even the darkest moments can lead to the most beautiful endings. Maya's story had become more than just a viral video. It had become a reminder that change is possible, that courage comes in all sizes, and that sometimes the most powerful response to hate is showing the world a better way.